Stop scrolling. Before February 11 ends, something locks in. Not in the sky, not in the headlines, not in the noise around you. Inside you, most people will miss this moment. They will treat it like any other day. Wake up, scroll, react, repeat, and they won't even realize they just stood at a turning point. But if you're here right now, something already feels different. Maybe you've felt it building, a strange pressure, a quiet urgency, a sense that something in your life cannot stay the same. That feeling is not random, it's not anxiety, it's awareness. There are moments in life that divide timelines, moments where small decisions carry unusual weight, moments where who you choose to be matters more than what happens around you. This is one of those moments. Before February 11 ends, you will either strengthen your old patterns or step into a new version of yourself. No announcement, no dramatic sign, just a quiet internal shift that separates those who move from those who drift. You were meant to see this, not everyone did, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why. Stay with me, because this is not about fear, it's about preparation, and preparation changes everything. Not every date is ordinary. Most people wake up thinking today is just another square on a calendar, just another sunrise, just another routine, just another scroll. But history does not move randomly, it moves in pressure points. There are ordinary days, and then there are days that sit quietly in the background, waiting to divide timelines. You rarely recognize them while you're inside them. That's the dangerous part. No alarms go off, no sky turns red, no headline announces, "This is the moment." It feels normal. That's why so many people miss it. Think about your own life. There were days you didn't think much of, but later you realized everything changed after that. A conversation, a decision, a moment of hesitation, a moment of courage, and you didn't know it at the time. February 10th and 11th are not about superstition. They are not about fear. They are about awareness. There are moments when internal pressure builds quietly. You start feeling restless, unsettled, like something is shifting beneath the surface, not chaos. Alignment. It's the same way tectonic plates move long before the ground shakes. Internal shifts happen first. External consequences follow. Most people only pay attention when the ground cracks, but the wise pay attention when the pressure builds. This is a pressure point, and pressure points are powerful because they compress time. Decisions made in high-pressure windows carry more weight. They echo longer. They shape identity. Imagine standing at a fork in the road at night. Both paths look similar, but one leads to momentum. The other leads to delay. The problem? The signposts are subtle. There is no dramatic music playing, only a quiet intuition asking, "Are you paying attention?" That voice is not random. That feeling that something matters right now is not random. Life gives subtle invitations before it gives consequences. This is one of those invitations, and here's what most people misunderstand. It's not about something happening to you. It's about something activating within you. There are days when your future self is closer than usual. Closer to your current decisions, closer to your habits, closer to your courage. Those days act like multipliers. If you lean into discipline on those days, the growth compounds faster. If you lean into distraction, the delay compounds just as fast. That's why not every date is ordinary. Some dates sit like invisible checkpoints, quietly asking, will you move forward or will you drift? And drifting feels harmless in the moment, but drifting during a hinge moment creates long-term stagnation. Hinge moments don't feel dramatic. They feel subtle, like a quiet tension in the air, like time slowing down just slightly, like awareness heightening without explanation. You might have felt it recently, a sense that something is closing or something is opening. That is not imagination. That is intuition scanning a shift. The problem is this: distraction is loud, awareness is quiet, and if you drown the quiet voice with noise, you miss the window. The greatest shifts in life rarely shout. They whisper, and whispers require focus. This is why not every date is ordinary. Some days are checkpoints in disguise. Some days compress the weight of months into hours. Some days hold the power of acceleration if you recognize them, and if you don't, they pass silently. But the opportunity attached to them does not return in the same form. So the real question isn't, what will happen on February 10th or 11th? The real question is, who will you be on February 11th when it ends? Because something is always shifting. The only difference is whether you are conscious enough to shift with it. And awareness is what separates ordinary days from turning points. 2. The warning is internal, not external. Most people think a warning means something dramatic is about to happen outside of them. A crisis, a collapse, a visible event. But the most powerful warnings in life do not come from the outside. They rise from within. You don't hear them with your ears. You feel them in your chest. A quiet tension, a subtle urgency, an unexplainable awareness that something matters right now. That feeling is not fear. It is alignment trying to get your attention. The external world is loud. News is loud. Opinions are loud. Notifications are loud. Drama is loud. But transformation is quiet, and so is the warning before it. You may have noticed it recently. A sense that you can't keep repeating the same habits. A feeling that distraction suddenly feels heavier than usual. A discomfort with your own excuses. That is not coincidence. That is your internal compass recalibrating. Here's what most people misunderstand. The real danger is not an event. The real danger is unconscious living. When you move on autopilot, you drift into outcomes you never consciously chose. You wake up months later wondering how you got here. But there were signs, there were moments, there were whispers. You just didn't slow down long enough to hear them. This warning is not about something happening to you. It's about something happening inside you. Your tolerance for mediocrity is shrinking. Your patience for distraction is thinning. Your awareness is expanding, and expansion feels uncomfortable at first because growth demands responsibility. It demands that you see clearly. It demands that you stop blaming circumstances. It demands that you admit you know better. That discomfort you feel lately, that is not anxiety. It is your higher awareness confronting your lower habits. And that confrontation feels like pressure. Pressure is not punishment. Pressure is preparation. Think about this carefully. When something external is about to collapse, there are visible cracks. But when something internal is about to evolve, the cracks are invisible. They appear in your thoughts, in your self-talk, in your sudden desire for change, in your refusal to accept what you once tolerated. This is an internal warning. It is not about fear of loss. It is about fear of wasted potential. And that fear is sacred, because wasted potential does not explode. It erodes, slowly, quietly, comfortably. That's why the warning feels subtle. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just a quiet question repeating in your mind. Is this really who I want to be? If you've been asking that lately, pay attention. If you felt restless in environments that once felt normal, pay attention. If you felt like you're standing at the edge of something invisible, pay attention. This is not chaos. This is awakening. And awakening always feels disruptive before it feels empowering. The internal warning is this: if you do not consciously choose growth now, comfort will choose stagnation for you. Comfort is seductive. It tells you there is time. It tells you tomorrow is fine. It tells you the shift can wait. But growth windows do not stay open forever. They narrow quietly, and when they close, they do not slam shut. They simply dissolve, and you feel it later as regret. This is why the warning is internal, because the battle is internal. Discipline versus distraction. Awareness versus autopilot, courage versus comfort, and no one else can fight that battle for you. External warnings are easy to respond to. Internal warnings require honesty. They require you to admit you've been delaying. They require you to see the patterns you've been protecting. They require you to act before the consequences demand it. And that is power, because when you respond to an internal warning, you move before pressure forces you to move. You grow before you are cornered. You shift before you are shaken. That is what separates reactive people from conscious ones. This moment is not asking you to panic. It is asking you to awaken, because the most important battles are never announced publicly. They are fought silently, within. And if you can hear the warning now, that means you are already ahead of most. The only question left is, will you respond to it, or will you silence it again? 3. Silence before acceleration. Most people mistake silence for stagnation. When nothing dramatic is happening, when the phone is quiet, when opportunities seem paused, when progress feels invisible, they assume they are stuck. But silence is not stagnation. Silence is compression. Before acceleration, there is always a tightening, a gathering, a recalibration that happens beneath the surface. Think about a bow and arrow. Before the arrow flies forward, It must be pulled back. That pulling back feels like delay, but it is not delay. It is stored force. The deeper the pull, the farther the release. And right now, if life feels quiet, slow, uncertain, you may not be being delayed. You may be being positioned. Acceleration without alignment leads to chaos, so sometimes life slows you down long enough to correct your direction. This is the part most people fail to understand. They panic during silence. They rush to create noise just to feel movement. They fill the quiet with distraction because stillness feels uncomfortable. But silence is where recalibration happens. It is where identity reshapes. It is where clarity forms. And clarity does not shout, it settles. There are moments in life when momentum pauses, not because you are losing, but because you are about to shift lanes. And changing lanes at high speed without slowing down is dangerous. So life reduces the noise, reduces the pace, reduces the chaos, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Silence forces you to face yourself. Without applause, without validation, without distraction, it strips away the external so you can see the internal. And that can feel heavy, because in silence, excuses become louder. In silence, your real thoughts surface. In silence, you see where you've been avoiding discipline. That confrontation is not failure, it is refinement. Most acceleration in life is visible. New job, new relationship, new opportunity. But the most powerful acceleration begins invisibly. It begins with mindset shifts, with habits tightening, with standards rising. Those changes do not trend publicly, but they multiply privately. Have you noticed that before something major happens in your life, there is often a strange calm, a pause, almost like time is holding its breath? That pause is not emptiness, it is accumulation. Storms do not appear instantly. Pressure builds first, quietly, and when the pressure reaches a certain point, movement becomes inevitable. Acceleration is not random, it is the release of stored alignment. If you've been in a quiet season, if things have felt slower than you expected, do not assume you are behind. You may be compressing, and compression is powerful, because when release comes, it is rapid. Here's the danger though: if you misinterpret silence as failure, you will sabotage the acceleration. You will overreact. You will abandon discipline. You will chase noise instead of strengthening foundations. And when momentum tries to arrive, you won't be ready to handle it. Acceleration without stability collapses. That is why silence comes first. Silence is a test. Can you stay disciplined without external reward? Can you stay focused without immediate results? Can you build without applause? If you can, acceleration becomes sustainable. But if you need constant validation to keep moving, you will burn out the moment speed increases. Silence is strengthening you. It is increasing your tolerance. It is sharpening your awareness. It is removing what cannot survive the next level. And removal feels like loss. But removal is often protection. Before expansion, there is pruning. Before speed, there is stillness. Before growth becomes visible, it becomes rooted. Roots grow in darkness, not in spotlight. If you are in a quiet phase right now, do not waste it. Refine your habits, sharpen your focus, strengthen your discipline, because when acceleration begins, you will not have time to prepare. Preparation happens in silence. Execution happens in momentum. Most people want speed. Very few are willing to endure the quiet. But the quiet is what determines how far and how fast you will go. Silence is not the absence of movement. It is hidden movement, and hidden movement is often the most powerful kind. So, if things feel calm before February 11 ends, do not assume nothing is happening. Something may be building. And when it releases, you will realize the silence was never empty. It was loaded. 4. The shift happens in decisions. People wait for dramatic signs. They wait for certainty, for clarity, for perfect timing. They believe the shift will arrive like lightning, obvious, undeniable, impossible to miss. But real shifts do not arrive with spectacle. They arrive disguised as decisions. Small ones, quiet ones, almost invisible. And that's why most people miss them. You won't wake up on February 10th or 11th and see your life transformed in front of you. You will wake up and face the same habits, the same options, the same temptations. The difference is not what appears in front of you. The difference is how you respond. That is where the shift hides. It hides in the moment you decide to wake up when you wanted to sleep longer. It hides in the moment you choose discipline when comfort calls your name. It hides in the moment you stay silent instead of reacting emotionally. It hides in the moment you stop scrolling and start building. The shift is never dramatic in the beginning. It is microscopic, but microscopic shifts compound into massive outcomes. Your future is not built in grand gestures. It is built in repeated decisions that feel insignificant in the moment. Most people think destiny is something that happens to them, but destiny is often the accumulation of small choices made during critical windows. This is a critical window, not because the world will change overnight, but because your pattern can, and patterns are powerful. Your life right now is the result of past decisions repeated long enough to become habits. If you want a different outcome, you cannot wait for a different circumstance. You must choose a different response. The shift does not happen when conditions improve. It happens when standards rise, and raising your standard is a decision. No one forces it, no one announces it. You simply decide that who you are becoming matters more than who you have been. That decision is internal, invisible, but irreversible. Because once you see the fork in the road, you cannot pretend it is not there. And right now, there is a fork. One path says, you can wait, you have time, nothing is urgent. The other path says, move now, strengthen now, decide now. Both paths feel subtle, but only one leads to acceleration. Every turning point in your life was disguised as a decision. Think back, the moment you chose to speak up, the moment you chose to stay silent, the moment you chose to leave, the moment you chose to stay. Those moments did not look dramatic at the time, but they shaped everything. That is what is happening here. The shift is not in the calendar. It is in your response to the calendar. You are being given a moment of heightened awareness. Heightened awareness amplifies the weight of decisions. When awareness increases, consequences multiply faster, because now you know, and once you know, ignoring becomes a choice too. That is the gravity of this lesson. Indecision is also a decision. Delaying is also choosing. Avoiding is also choosing. You are always choosing something. Growth or comfort, discipline or distraction, alignment or autopilot. And in powerful windows like this, the weight of those choices intensifies. The shift happens when you interrupt the old pattern, not once, but deliberately, when you choose differently even though nothing forced you to. That is power, because reactive people change only when pain becomes unbearable. Conscious people change before pain demands it. That is the difference between being pushed and stepping forward. Right now, nothing may be forcing you. There may be no crisis, no collapse, no visible pressure, but awareness itself is pressure, and awareness is the invitation. You can ignore it and remain the same, or you can use it to redefine yourself. The shift is not waiting for permission. It is waiting for a decision, not a dramatic one, a consistent one, and once you make it, momentum begins quietly. So when February 11 ends, the world may look the same, but if you chose differently, you won't be. And that is how real shifts begin. Not with noise, but with choice. 5. Not everyone will be aligned with your next level. Growth is exciting in theory, but in reality, growth rearranges everything. It rearranges your habits. It rearranges your standards. And eventually, it rearranges your relationships. Most people believe everyone will celebrate their evolution. They imagine applause, support, encouragement, but elevation exposes alignment. And not everyone is aligned with who you are becoming. This is not about arrogance. It is about frequency. When your standards rise, your tolerance lowers. Conversations that once felt normal begin to feel draining. Environments that once felt comfortable begin to feel restrictive. You start noticing subtle things. How often people complain, how often they avoid responsibility, how often they resist discipline, and suddenly, you feel slightly out of place. That feeling is not superiority, it is transition. Here is the difficult truth. Some people were assigned to your current chapter, not your next one. They were meant to walk with you during confusion, during struggle, during uncertainty. But when clarity begins to rise, alignment shifts, and shifts create friction. You might notice distance forming. You might feel misunderstood. You might feel like your ambition makes others uncomfortable. That discomfort is not accidental. Growth exposes differences in direction. If you begin moving toward discipline while others move toward distraction, Tension is inevitable, not because anyone is evil, but because direction matters. Two people can care about each other deeply, but if they are walking in opposite directions, the distance increases automatically. And here is where most people sabotage themselves. They shrink to maintain comfort. They lower their standards to preserve connection. They dim their awareness to avoid friction. But shrinking to fit your old environment is self-betrayal. You cannot outgrow a mindset while still trying to remain comfortable inside it. Elevation is selective, not cruel, selective. It filters what can move forward with you, and filters feel like loss at first, because humans crave familiarity, even if that familiarity limits them. But ask yourself, would you rather feel temporarily uncomfortable or permanently stagnant? Your next level requires space. Space for discipline, space for focus, space for growth. If your environment resists that space, something must shift. This does not mean you abandon everyone. It means you observe alignment honestly. Some people will support you quietly, some will resist you subtly, and some will drift naturally. Do not chase those who drift. Chasing what is misaligned pulls you backward. Instead, strengthen your direction, because alignment is not forced, it is revealed. As you grow, you will notice something powerful. The people who truly align with your next level will not feel threatened by your discipline. They will feel inspired. They will respect your focus. They will understand your boundaries. And those who cannot accept your growth are not your enemies. They are indicators. Indicators of how much you have changed. Here is the deeper reality. When you shift internally, the external world must recalibrate around you. That recalibration can feel lonely, because the old version of you had a certain ecosystem, certain dynamics, certain patterns. When you break the pattern, the ecosystem reacts. But reaction does not mean you are wrong. It means you are evolving. The fear of losing people keeps many individuals stuck. They would rather maintain connection than pursue expansion. But real connection does not require you to shrink. Real connection grows with you. If someone can only accept you at your previous level, they are attached to a version of you that no longer fits. And that is not betrayal. That is transition. Before February 11 ends, understand this clearly. You cannot step into a stronger identity while carrying every old attachment unchanged. Some connections will deepen, some will dissolve, some will remain neutral, but all will reveal alignment. Do not panic if distance appears. Do not chase validation. Do not explain your growth to those committed to staying the same. Move quietly, move steadily, move intentionally, because your next level is not about popularity. It is about precision, and precision requires alignment. Not everyone will walk with you further, but those meant to will. And those who are not were never meant to go the distance. That is not loss, that is clarity. 6. Urgency is a gift. Most people misunderstand urgency. They think urgency means panic, chaos, pressure, something going wrong. But true urgency does not feel like fear. It feels like clarity under time. It feels like awareness tightening. It feels like a quiet realization that the window will not stay open forever. That realization is not meant to scare you. It is meant to sharpen you. There are two types of urgency in life. The first comes after consequences, after the damage is done, after the opportunity is gone, after regret begins whispering. That urgency feels desperate because it is reactive. But the second type of urgency comes before the collapse, before the loss, before the regret. It comes as a subtle internal signal. Move now. That signal is a gift because it gives you the chance to act while you still have leverage. Most people wait until pain forces them. They wait until the situation deteriorates. They wait until the discomfort becomes unbearable. But conscious individuals move before the pressure explodes. They act while the stakes are still manageable. That is power. If you are feeling urgency right now, not chaos, not panic, but a steady internal push, that is not anxiety. That is alignment trying to accelerate you. Alignment compresses time. It makes you aware that delay costs more than effort. It shows you that hesitation slowly erodes opportunity. The problem is this. Comfort fights urgency. Comfort says, relax, you can start tomorrow. Comfort says, it's not that serious. Comfort whispers softly enough to feel harmless. But comfort during a growth window is dangerous because growth windows narrow quietly. You rarely notice when they close. You only notice later when momentum feels harder to build. Urgency is not here to exhaust you. It is here to focus you. It strips away the unnecessary. It sharpens your priorities. It forces you to see what truly matters. When urgency is healthy, it doesn't scatter your attention. It concentrates it like sunlight through a magnifying glass. Without focus, sunlight warms. With focus, it ignites. That is what urgency does to awareness. It concentrates it into action. Right now, you have space, you have time, you have options. That combination will not always exist in the same form. And when you recognize that, movement becomes logical, not emotional. Logical because you understand that delayed discipline multiplies difficulty. Think carefully. How many times in your life did you sense something needed to change, but you waited, and later, the change became harder? Urgency ignored becomes pressure later. Urgency accepted becomes momentum. That is the difference. The gift of urgency is that it arrives before damage. It arrives while your power is intact. It arrives while the decision is still yours. And if you ignore it, life will eventually create external urgency for you. Deadlines, consequences, forcing functions. But externally forced urgency rarely feels empowering. It feels stressful because you waited. Right now, you are being offered a cleaner form of urgency, a voluntary one, no crisis attached, just awareness. This is rare. Most people only move when cornered. Very few move when invited. And this moment is an invitation to tighten your habits, to clarify your focus, to elevate your standard without waiting for pain to justify it. That is strength. Urgency is a gift because it exposes the cost of delay without making you suffer it first. It shows you the edge of the cliff before you step too close. It whispers, you still have time, use it. Before February 11 ends, understand this clearly. If you feel urgency, do not suppress it, channel it. Let it refine you, let it narrow your focus, let it push you slightly beyond your current comfort. Because comfort never built anything lasting. Movement does, and urgency is movement knocking. You can ignore it and drift back into routine. Or you can respond and step forward deliberately. But once this window passes, the intensity of awareness may fade, and faded awareness often leads back to autopilot. This is why urgency is sacred. It is awareness with momentum. It is clarity with pressure. It is opportunity with a ticking clock. Not to scare you, but to sharpen you. The question is simple. Will you treat urgency like stress or like a signal? Because how you interpret it determines how you use it, and how you use it determines what happens next. 7. Your attention is the real currency. Most people think money is the most valuable resource. It's not. Money can be regained. Status can be rebuilt. Opportunities can reappear. But attention, once spent carelessly, it reshapes your direction permanently. Attention is not just focus. It is energy allocation. It is life force distribution. Whatever you consistently give your attention to begins to grow in your reality, not because of magic, because of reinforcement. The brain strengthens what it repeatedly observes. The mind expands what it repeatedly entertains. And life begins to mirror what you repeatedly prioritize. This is why your attention is currency, because it funds outcomes. Right now, in this window, your attention matters more than usual, not because the calendar is special, but because awareness is heightened. When awareness increases, the impact of focus multiplies. Think about this carefully. If you spend the next 48 hours feeding distraction, comparison, noise, negativity, that state compounds. If you spend the next 48 hours strengthening discipline, clarity, strategy, reflection, that compounds too. You are always investing. The only question is, into what? The modern world is designed to steal attention. Notifications, endless scrolling, arguments, drama, artificial urgency. Every platform competes for your focus, because whoever controls your attention influences your direction. If your attention is fragmented, your life becomes fragmented. If your attention is intentional, your life becomes intentional. This is not motivational language. It is psychological law. Attention shapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes, and outcomes shape destiny. So when you scatter your attention across trivial things, you dilute your growth, you weaken momentum, you delay transformation. Most people are not lacking intelligence, they are lacking concentrated attention. They start things without finishing, they shift goals without committing, they react instead of directing, all because their focus is hijacked constantly. But in a heightened window like this, awareness allows you to reclaim it. You can choose what you feed, you can choose what you ignore. You can choose where your mental energy flows, and that choice is powerful because attention does not just observe reality, it amplifies it. Whatever you stare at long enough begins to dominate your thoughts. If you stare at problems constantly, your mind trains itself to scan for more problems. If you stare at growth, discipline, improvement, solutions, your mind strengthens those neural pathways. Your focus becomes your filter, and your filter determines what you see. That's why two people can experience the same day and walk away with different realities. One invested attention into chaos, the other invested attention into growth. Same environment, different outcomes, because attention is leverage. Before February 11 ends, audit your focus. What have you been feeding? Comparison, excuses, fear, or clarity? Discipline, direction? Attention is not neutral, it builds. If you feed distraction, you build distraction. If you feed strength, you build strength. And here's the part most people ignore. Where attention goes consistently, emotion follows. Emotion then fuels behavior. So, if your attention is constantly pulled into negative loops, your emotional state declines. And when your emotional state declines, your decisions weaken. It is a chain reaction, but the chain can be reversed. Protect your attention like wealth. Guard it. Direct it. Be selective with it. Not everything deserves your mental energy. Not every opinion requires your reaction. Not every notification requires your response. You do not need to engage with everything. You need to build something, and building requires focus. Deep focus, undistracted focus, because scattered energy creates scattered results, but concentrated energy creates momentum. If you truly want to shift timelines, shift attention. Turn it inward, turn it toward discipline. Turn it towards strengthening the habits that support your next level. Because your attention today determines your reality tomorrow. And most people will waste this window without realizing they are wasting it. They will scroll through it, complain through it, react through it. But a few will direct it, and those few will feel the difference later. Attention is not small, it is structural. It determines what grows in your life. So the question is simple, what are you funding right now? Because whatever you fund with attention will expand, and once it expands, it shapes your path. This is why your attention is the real currency. Spend it wisely. 8. Break the pattern now. Most people believe their life is controlled by circumstances, but if you look closely, it is controlled by patterns, repeated reactions, repeated habits, repeated thoughts. Patterns are invisible architects. They quietly design your future while you assume life is just happening. And the most dangerous pattern of all? Autopilot. Doing what you've always done, reacting the way you've always reacted, thinking the way you've always thought, expecting different outcomes. Patterns feel safe because they are familiar, even destructive ones, even limiting ones, even the ones that quietly sabotage your growth. You know your patterns. The delay before starting something important. The emotional reaction you justify every time. The comfort routine you return to when discipline feels hard. The excuses that sound logical in your own head. Those are not random moments. They are loops, and loops do not break themselves. They strengthen through repetition. Every time you respond the same way, the pattern deepens. Neural pathways reinforce. Behavior becomes automatic. Identity adapts around it. And slowly, what began as a choice becomes a default. That is how stagnation forms, not dramatically, but predictably. The most powerful shifts in life happen the moment a pattern is interrupted, not once, deliberately. You do not need a massive life overhaul. You need a single conscious interruption. Pause before reacting, move before procrastinating, speak differently, choose differently. That interruption feels small, but it is disruptive, because patterns rely on predictability. The moment you respond differently, the loop destabilizes, and instability is uncomfortable. That discomfort is growth. Breaking a pattern feels unnatural at first. Your mind resists. Your body resists. Your excuses grow louder because patterns protect familiarity. And familiarity feels safe even when it limits you. Right now, in this window, awareness is heightened. That means your patterns are easier to see. You may notice the same emotional triggers repeating, the same distractions calling you, the same behaviors trying to pull you back. This is not coincidence. It is exposure. When you prepare to level up, old patterns attempt to reclaim control. They test your commitment. They whisper, "You can change later." They rationalize comfort, but understand this clearly. Every time you break a pattern, you rewrite identity. Identity is not who you say you are. It is who you consistently behave like. If you consistently interrupt weakness, you become disciplined. If you consistently interrupt fear, you become courageous. If you consistently interrupt distraction, you become focused. Identity shifts through repetition of interruption. Most people wait for motivation, but motivation is unreliable. Patterns are stronger than motivation. Only conscious action breaks them. Before February 11 ends, choose one pattern, just one. The one that costs you the most long-term growth. The one that quietly keeps you average. The one you know you've been tolerating. And interrupt it, not emotionally, strategically. If you procrastinate, act immediately on something meaningful. If you overreact, pause and choose silence. If you avoid responsibility, step directly into it. Small interruptions create cracks in old systems, and once a crack appears, momentum can enter. The danger is not that patterns exist. The danger is that you normalize them. You call them personality. You call them stress. You call them circumstances. But they are loops, and loops keep you cycling through similar outcomes. Breaking a pattern once feels difficult. Breaking it twice feels intentional. Breaking it consistently rewires you, and rewiring is power, because once you are rewired, your default changes. Your reactions shift automatically. Your decisions strengthen automatically. And what once required discipline becomes natural. That is transformation. Not dramatic, not explosive, systematic, pattern by pattern, interruption by interruption. Most people will feel awareness in this window and do nothing. They will observe their patterns and continue them, and later they will wonder why nothing changed. But you are not here to observe, you are here to interrupt, because the moment you break the pattern, you break the predictability of your old future, and that is where new outcomes begin. 9. Fear is often a signal of growth. Most people run from fear. They interpret it as a stop sign, a warning, a red light, a signal to retreat. But fear is not always danger. Sometimes fear is expansion. The problem is this: your brain is designed to protect familiarity, not greatness, not potential, familiarity. Anything unknown feels threatening at first, even if that unknown contains your next level. That's why growth feels uncomfortable, not because it is wrong, but because it is new. When you consider stepping into discipline, fear whispers, "What if you fail?" When you consider raising your standards, fear whispers, "What if people reject you?" When you consider leaving comfort behind, fear whispers, "What if this was safer?" Fear does not analyze long-term reward. It scans for short-term stability, and stability feels safer than progress. But here is the truth most people never confront. The fear you feel before growth is different from the fear you feel before destruction. Destructive fear feels chaotic, heavy, unstable. Growth fear feels sharp, tense, electric. It feels like standing at the edge of something meaningful, like you know it matters, like your heart is beating faster because something important is ahead. That is not danger, that is transition. Every time you level up, fear shows up at the door first, not to stop you, but to test you, because expansion demands courage. And courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement despite it. Think back to every breakthrough in your life. There was fear before it, before speaking up, before taking a risk, before choosing differently, before committing seriously. Fear was there, but so was growth. Fear appears strongest right before identity shifts. Because identity shifts are uncomfortable. They dismantle the old version of you, and the old version does not disappear quietly. It resists, it questions, it doubts. That resistance feels like fear, but it is simply the old identity trying to survive. If you misinterpret that fear as a stop sign, you remain the same. If you interpret it as a gateway, you expand. That is the difference. Right now, in this window, you may feel tension, a sense that something important requires action. But action feels intimidating. That intimidation is not proof you should avoid it. It is proof it matters. Fear often guards the door to your next level. Because if it were easy, everyone would walk through. The reason most people remain average is not lack of opportunity. It is avoidance of discomfort. They interpret fear as evidence they are unprepared, but often fear is evidence you are stretching, and stretching feels unstable before it feels powerful. Your nervous system prefers certainty. Growth removes certainty. So fear spikes, but fear spikes before progress. Always. Athletes feel it before competition. Speakers feel it before the stage. Leaders feel it before decisions. It is not a flaw, it is energy. The question is, will you convert that energy into action or into retreat? Because fear unused becomes stagnation. Fear channeled becomes momentum. And understand this clearly. The longer you avoid what scares you, the larger it becomes in your mind. Avoidance feeds fear. Action shrinks it. Even small action, even imperfect action. Before February 11 ends, identify the thing you've been avoiding, the call you haven't made, the habit you haven't tightened, the boundary you haven't enforced, the step you know you should take. That tension around it, that is not weakness. That is growth knocking. The mind exaggerates risk when identity is about to shift. But most of the time, what lies beyond fear is clarity, confidence, expansion, because confidence does not come before action. It comes after surviving what you feared, and once you survive it once, the fear loses power. That is how courage compounds. Fear is not your enemy. Misinterpretation of fear is, it is not telling you to run. It is asking you, are you ready to evolve? And if you step forward despite it, something changes permanently. Because every time you face fear and move anyway, you weaken its grip and strengthen your identity. Fear is often the final barrier before breakthrough. The question is simple. Will you let it guard the door, or will you walk through it? 10. Clarity comes after commitment. Most people are waiting for clarity before they move. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want the full map before taking the first step. But clarity does not arrive before commitment. It arrives because of commitment. This is where so many people stall. They sit in hesitation, analyzing endlessly. What if it doesn't work? What if I choose wrong? What if I'm not ready? They believe thinking longer will reduce risk, but thinking without action increases confusion. Because clarity is not a thought process, it is a movement process. The mind does not reveal full direction until it sees proof of commitment. Commitment signals seriousness. It tells your brain, this matters, and once something matters, your perception sharpens. Opportunities that were invisible become noticeable. Solutions that were blurry become obvious, but only after you move. Waiting for certainty before action is like waiting to feel strong before lifting weights. Strength develops through resistance. Clarity develops through movement. When you stand still, everything feels foggy. When you take one step, even a small one, perspective shifts. Momentum creates information. Information creates refinement. Refinement creates clarity. That is the sequence. Most people reverse it. They want clarity first, but clarity is earned. Right now, you may not see the entire path ahead. That is normal. You are not supposed to. If you could see the entire path clearly, there would be no growth involved, only repetition. Growth requires partial vision. It requires trust in direction before full understanding. Think about every major turning point in your life. Did you have complete certainty, or did you move with incomplete information? Most breakthroughs begin with incomplete confidence. Confidence grows after action, not before it. The same is true for clarity. When you hesitate too long, doubt grows. The mind begins inventing worst-case scenarios. Overthinking amplifies fear, but commitment interrupts doubt. The moment you commit, even quietly, something shifts internally. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop debating endlessly. You begin organizing your energy around execution. That organization creates focus, and focus reduces fog. The truth is this: Indecision drains more energy than action. When you are undecided, your mind runs constant background calculations. It consumes attention, it drains momentum, it weakens resolve. But when you decide, even imperfectly, energy aligns. You know what you are building toward. You know what you are saying no to. And saying no creates clarity just as much as saying yes. Right now, before February 11 ends, you do not need a perfect plan. You need a committed direction. Direction sharpens as you move. The first step will not be flawless. It does not need to be. It needs to be real. Commitment does not mean recklessness. It means intentional movement despite incomplete information. It means trusting that refinement happens during action. Most people never experience clarity because they never commit long enough to reach it. They start, they doubt, they stop, they switch, they repeat, and confusion becomes their default. But when you commit fully, you remove the escape route. You tell yourself, this is the direction. Now I refine it. Refinement builds mastery, and mastery builds confidence. And confidence builds clarity. It is layered, sequential, earned. Clarity is not a flash of insight. It is the result of disciplined follow-through. If you want to know whether something works, commit to it deeply enough to gather real evidence. Half-hearted attempts create half-visible results. Half-visible results create more doubt, and doubt feeds indecision. Break the cycle. Commit fully, even if the path adjusts later. Adjustment is not failure. Adjustment is progress. But you cannot adjust what you never truly began. So ask yourself, what have you been waiting to feel certain about? What step have you been delaying until it feels right? Often, feeling ready is just fear disguised as logic. You do not need to feel ready. You need to move, because once you move, readiness grows, clarity grows, confidence grows, and what once looked uncertain begins to look obvious, but only because you stepped forward. Before this window closes, decide, not emotionally, strategically. Commit to the direction you know aligns with growth. You do not need the entire staircase. You need the next step, and once you take it, the next one becomes visible. Clarity is not found in waiting. It is built in motion. 11. This is a separation point. There are moments in life that quietly divide people. Not loudly, not publicly, not with announcements, but internally. Separation points are subtle. They do not look dramatic from the outside. The world continues as normal. The noise continues. The routines continue. But beneath the surface, decisions are being made. Standards are being set. Identities are being chosen. And those choices begin separating paths. Most people never realize when they are standing at a separation point. They assume it is just another ordinary stretch of time. But later, when they look back, they recognize it clearly. That was the moment. The moment where some moved forward and others stayed the same. The difference is rarely talent. It is rarely intelligence. It is rarely opportunity. It is response. At separation points, everyone feels the same awareness. Everyone senses something. Attention, a push, a quiet invitation to step up. But only a few respond. The rest delay. They rationalize. They convince themselves nothing is urgent. And in doing so, they quietly choose stagnation. Separation points do not force you. They reveal you. They expose whether you move voluntarily or only under pressure. They expose whether you are driven by discipline or by comfort. They expose whether you act when invited or only when cornered. Right now, this is a separation point, not because something explosive is happening, but because awareness is high, and high awareness amplifies choice. When awareness rises, the cost of inaction rises with it. If you ignore awareness during a critical window, you harden into old patterns. You reinforce your default, and once reinforced, defaults become difficult to break. This is why separation points matter. They accelerate divergence. Two people standing in the same environment can walk away in completely different directions. One tightens habits, the other relaxes them. One sharpens focus, the other drifts into distraction. One confronts fear, the other avoids it. The divergence is invisible at first, but over time, it compounds. Months later, their results look dramatically different. Not because of luck, because of response. Separation is not about superiority, it is about trajectory. When two lines start at the same point but move in slightly different directions, the distance between them widens over time. That widening begins with small angles, small decisions, small standards. And this is the part most people underestimate. Separation points feel normal while they are happening. There is no dramatic music, no announcement, just a quiet internal awareness asking, are you going to rise or repeat? If you choose repetition, nothing explodes. Life continues. Comfort remains. But growth stalls. If you choose rise, nothing explodes either. But discipline strengthens. Identity shifts. Momentum begins quietly. And momentum compounds. Separation points are not about instant transformation. They are about trajectory correction. And trajectory is everything. Because trajectory determines where you land long before you arrive. Right now, you are not deciding your next 24 hours. You are influencing your next 6 months, your next year, your next identity. That influence begins with how you respond in this window. The world will not separate you. Your choices will. Some people will wake up after this window and feel the same. Others will wake up stronger, clearer, more disciplined. The difference will not be visible immediately, but it will exist, and over time, it will widen. You cannot stand still at a separation point. Even inaction is a direction. Even hesitation is a choice. Even ignoring the moment is movement, just not forward. This is the weight of it. Separation points do not punish you. They simply honor your decision. If you choose growth, they amplify growth. If you choose comfort, they amplify comfort. But amplification works both ways. That is why awareness matters so much. Because once you see the fork, you cannot pretend it is not there. You cannot unknow the tension. You cannot silence the internal push without consciously deciding to. And that decision defines you. Before February 11 ends, understand this clearly. You are not being tested by circumstance. You are being revealed by choice. Revealed in discipline. Revealed in focus. Revealed in courage. Some will cross this invisible line and never look back. Others will drift past it without noticing. The separation will not be loud, but it will be real. The only question is, on which side of it will you stand? 12. You were meant to see this. Out of millions of videos, millions of distractions, millions of random pieces of content competing for your attention, you stopped here. That is not something to dismiss lightly, because most people scroll past moments that could change them. They feel the pull and ignore it. They sense the weight and suppress it. They notice the tension and distract themselves from it. But you didn't scroll, you stayed, and that matters. Not because this video is magical, but because attention reveals readiness. You do not stay where you are not prepared to grow. Something inside you recognized this message, recognized the urgency, recognized the shift, recognized the internal pressure, and instead of turning away, you leaned in. That is not random behavior, that is alignment. There are moments in life when awareness increases suddenly. You start noticing patterns you ignored before. You start questioning habits you once defended. You start feeling discomfort with routines that used to feel normal. Those moments are invitations to evolve. But not everyone accepts them. Most people feel the invitation and retreat. Because evolution requires responsibility. It requires discipline. It requires the courage to outgrow old versions of yourself. If you are here, it means you are standing at that edge. The edge between who you were and who you are capable of becoming. And edges are uncomfortable. They create tension. They create uncertainty. But they also create opportunity. You were meant to see this because you are ready to decide. Not emotionally, not impulsively, intentionally. There is a version of you that exists 6 months from now, more focused, more disciplined, more aligned. That version is not waiting for luck. It is waiting for your commitment. Every shift begins with awareness, and awareness is what brought you here. But awareness without action fades. It becomes another moment, another message, another temporary spark. The difference between those who transform and those who repeat is simple. One group acts on awareness, the other observes it. You were meant to see this because you are capable of acting, capable of breaking patterns, capable of facing fear, capable of committing before certainty, capable of protecting your attention, capable of responding to urgency instead of suppressing it. This message did not appear in your life by accident. It appeared at a moment when your tolerance for stagnation is decreasing, when your patience for distraction is thinning, when your internal standards are rising quietly. That rise is not random, it is evolution, and evolution always begins internally before it becomes visible externally. You may not feel dramatically different tomorrow. There may be no external sign, no applause, no confirmation. But internally, something has shifted, because now you know this is a separation point. You know urgency is a gift. You know patterns must be broken deliberately. You know clarity follows commitment. You know fear often guards growth. You know silence can mean preparation. And once you know these things, you cannot unknow them. That knowledge changes how you move. The real power of this moment is not in the date. It is in the decision attached to it. Before February 11 ends, you have an opportunity to tighten discipline, to raise standards, to choose differently, to interrupt autopilot, to move before pressure forces you. You are meant to see this because you are not average. Average scrolls, average avoids discomfort, average waits for certainty. You are here because something inside you refuses to remain average, refuses to repeat cycles, refuses to ignore awareness. That refusal is strength, and strength compounds. When this window closes, the world will look the same, but you do not have to be. The calendar does not create transformation. Choice does, and choice is happening right now. So the final question is not whether something prophetic is happening around you. The final question is whether something powerful is happening within you. Because if it is, then this moment was not random. It was alignment, and alignment always leads somewhere. The only question left is, will you move, or will you scroll past your own evolution? The shift does not wait, but it does respond. And you were meant to see this because you are capable of responding. Now, decide who you are becoming before this window closes, because once it closes, the version of you that acted will exist, and the version that didn't will exist too. Only one of them moves forward. Choose carefully. When this day ends, nothing dramatic may happen on the outside. The sky will look the same. The world will move the same. People will continue their routines. But something inside you will know. You will know whether you drifted or decided. You will know whether you silenced the awareness or acted on it, because this was never about a date. It was about a decision. Most people will never realize they stood at a separation point. They will call it just another day. But you won't, because you saw it, you felt it, and now you understand it. Before February 11 ends, you still have leverage. Leverage to tighten discipline. Leverage to break a pattern. Leverage to move before pressure forces you. After this window passes, the opportunity doesn't disappear, but the intensity fades, and intensity is rare, so don't waste it. When you close this video, don't go back to autopilot. Go back sharper, more intentional, more aware of who you are becoming, because the shift does not announce itself. It responds to action. And tonight, when the clock moves forward, there will be two versions of you. The one who moved and the one who delayed. Only one of them builds momentum. Choose carefully, and if this message reached you at the right time, then it was never random. It was alignment. I'll see you on the other side of your decision.